Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. It's Lane here with MetaShackle. Today we're going to be going over something a little bit different. In terms of crypto wallets, there are a couple of different types of wallets that you can have to secure your crypto. The first is an institutional wallet that exists on exchanges, which is custodial, which means the exchange alone controls your crypto. So if they shut your crypto off or block your access to your wallet, there's no recourse. There's nothing that you can do. All of the power within those wallets belongs in the hand of the institution. There are also software wallets that you can put on your smartphone or on your desktop. These are custodial wallets that you control and in which you have your own seed phrase to use as a recovery tool in case you forget your password or somehow lose access to that particular wallet. Then there are cold storage wallets, like I prefer to use, which are air-gapped from the internet and act as a private key for gaining access to your crypto, and also have a 24-word seed phrase for recovery. Now, if you don't understand the concept of having a private key, generally the easiest way to explain this is thinking of it like your vehicle. Your vehicle is parked out in front of your home. Now, it's in the public arena. Anyone who drives by or walks by your house can see that your vehicle is sitting out front. But you, having the private key, are the only person that can gain access to that vehicle. Now, a cold storage wallet acts as that private key, which gives you the ability to be the only individual to access your crypto. And if you lose the device or you lose access to the device, you can then use your seed phrase or your recovery phrase, as some people like to call it, in order to regain access to your crypto wallet. So essentially, storing your recovery phrase is very important because without it, your crypto will be completely lost if you lose access to your wallet. Now, people have lots of different ways of creating backups for these. Some people just write them down on a piece of paper, which I never recommend anyone doing, as paper can be destroyed very easily and lost even easier. What I would always recommend is that you put your recovery phrase on steel, either by punching it into steel or etching it into steel. Generally, I would recommend using 304 stainless steel because it has a melting point of about 2,550 degrees Fahrenheit to 2,650 degrees Fahrenheit. And with the average temperature of a house fire being anywhere from between 1,100 degrees and 2,000 degrees, using 304 stainless steel protects your wallet from fire, it protects it from water, it protects it from rust and corrosion. And the only exception to this would be if you live in a coastal area where there's a lot of salt in the air or salt water in the ground. I would recommend using 316 stainless steel because it's significantly better than 304 in marine or saltwater environments, as it has great corrosion resistance when exposed to saltwater environments. And me living as far inland as I do, 304 is by far the best choice for me. But there are a lot of different types of devices that have been created, things that you can buy anywhere from $30 to $150 to use as a backup for your crypto wallet's recovery phrase. And they're not all built equal. Some of them are very silly and very irresponsible to use, in my opinion. And I will go over some of those at the end of the video. But I've seen quite a few people coming up with a very interesting idea, which is a way to use stainless steel washers, punching the seed phrase into each washer, numbering each one of those, because remember, with your recovery phrase, each word that you have of the 24 words must be in the proper order as well. They're not case sensitive like passphrases are, but you have to have them in the right order. So the first word would be number 1, the second word would be number 2, the third word would be number 3. And if you mix those 3 words up, you're going to be in a world of hurt because they have to be in the appropriate order. So this makes it very easy to punch these into steel as long as you have the ability to number each washer individually, add the word from the seed phrase that corresponds with that number, and then create a single washer for every single word in your seed phrase. In the case of a cold storage wallet, which would be 24 washers. So I recently bought everything that I needed because I was just curious how hard it would be to actually build one of these, and I just wanted to see what I thought about the overall product once it was finished. So I ended up building one of these, and I'm very impressed with it overall. I really like the way it turned out. There are some things that I'd probably do different if I did another one, but overall I really like the way this turned out. It is kind of a DIY thing, but me, being a carpenter for 27 years of my life, I'm the kind of guy that I like to build things, I like to do stuff. So for me, it was just kind of a fun little project to do, and I just kind of wanted to see how it compared to the current method that I use to back up all of my recovery phrases, because I also use very secure passphrases on all of my devices, which being an advanced feature adds an entirely new level of responsibility to the management of each one of your wallets that you use them on. So let's take a look at this crypto steel backup that I built. For additional information and exclusive perks, do consider joining me and the rest of our community on Patreon. So I bought 2 of these little units. They're called crypto cloaks. This allows you to punch the word and the number into each washer and make it look nice and straight and nice and even. You can get these on Amazon for about $10. You get 2 per order. Now you can see how the washers fit inside of them perfectly. Now the 2 notches here on the top is where you put your numbers. The position it's sitting in now could be a 0. The second position could be a 1. Then there are 8 notches below for each word in your recovery phrase. The washers fit very snug within these, but you have to have a very smooth surface like a steel plate or flat concrete in order to stamp them, because it takes quite a bit of force to get a really good impression. Although these little devices are absolutely incredible, and I really like the design. You simply take your punch, you put it into the slot, then you strike it with the hammer, and indent each word of your seed phrase into the metal washer. These are the punches that I purchased to use. I needed the uppercase, the lowercase, as well as punctuation, since I use a passphrase, which is case sensitive, and you can use numbers, letters, symbols, and spaces. But if you're just doing a 24-word seed phrase, you only need the set for the all capitals. And it leaves a very nice impression if you look at it. You can actually take a fine tip black Sharpie and go into the letters themselves after you've punched them like I've done here, and blacken them out to make them easier to see. I do have some vision issues, so this helps me to see the words much easier. Now here is the cylinder which I used, which consists of military-grade aluminum, which very well could melt in a house fire, but tapping it with a hammer would knock it loose from the steel located inside. But you can buy stainless steel containers as well. I chose to go with this one because I wanted to make sure it was completely waterproof. And located inside of this cylinder is a bolt with a nut on it, which holds all of the individual washers, including my 24-word seed phrase as well as my passphrase. And you can see it fits in here nice and snug. The diameter of this particular container literally leaves about 1 millimeter total around each one of these washers. It is very snug, fitting nearly perfectly. The thing I like about this container is it seals completely tight. It is absolutely waterproof. It has an O-ring around the rim, and it is very well built. Now, I also found a rubber grommet that is used in sinks that fits on the bottom of the bolt that I used, which actually gives it a little cushion once you screw it tight, so that this does not rattle around within the container. You can find these for about 30 cents at Home Depot. I also decided to use a very low-profile screw-type bolt with a locking nut on the top. Now overall, these washers sit at about 57.59 millimeters, which is about 2¼ inches. Overall, the entire length is 69.73, which is about 2¾ inches. Yeah, right on the money. So this is pretty much maxed out for this particular container. In fractions, it sits at about 2 1/6 of an inch. Now the washers themselves, which are supposed to be 24 millimeters, actually came in just a little bit smaller at 23.78. And the hole in the center is supposed to be 8 millimeters, but it came in a little larger at about 8.6 millimeters, which actually worked out to my advantage. The container overall measures in at 30.74 millimeters, which is 1 3/16 of an inch. Now measuring it from the thread to the bottom, 65.5 millimeters, which is 2 inches and 9/16 of an inch. I put the rubber grommet on the bottom to give me a little bit of spacing and to make sure it fits nice and snug. Then it slides right into the container, which pushes up against the top of the lid and seals it very tight. You can also see that the O-ring here actually fits up inside of the metal, sealing it perfectly against any amount of water. So you could basically bury this thing in your backyard for 10 years if you wanted, and no water's getting in this bad boy. I really like the way this looks. I really like the size. Overall, it is at about 98.75 millimeters, which is about 3 inches and 7/8, so just slightly under 4 inches total. It's a very sleek, very nice looking package. There's no sound. It doesn't wiggle around in there. It's very solid, and I'm very happy with the final product. I really like what I see. Now, when you come over to Amazon and you look at some of the devices that they have that they sell, they range anywhere from $30, $150. There's a couple for about $200, which I think is ridiculous. And many of them actually have these separate letters, like this device right here, the Keystone, where you don't actually punch the letters in. You use the letters they give you, and then you put them in order and screw the device together. I would never recommend anyone ever using these, because if this ever comes apart and these letters get jumbled up, you have lost the words to your seed phrase, and it is over for you. Do not use these devices. This one does the same thing. Now you can also get these stainless steel plates where you use the same types of punches and then just punch the words in as they go. You can also just punch the first 4 letters of each word in your seed phrase, because no 4 letters in the beginning of a word are alike. So by having the first 4 letters of any word in your seed phrase, of the 24 words in your seed phrase, all you would need to do is put the first 4 letters down on each row for the 24 words. I would much rather you go with something like this than something like this. And if you're going to get one of these instead, make sure to get one like this that doesn't have markings on it, so nobody knows what it is looking at it. You don't want this to have like a Bitcoin logo or an XRP logo on it, because that would stand out and draw attention. That's the last thing you'd ever want to do. They have these where you can punch the holes, different things. I really don't like these. They don't seem like they would really stand up to the test of time. There's also a kit that is sold to do the exact same thing that I did, building the same wallet that I did, that sells for about $150, which is quite a bit more than what I spent. With the stuff that I bought, I could probably build 6 of them for that price. Pretty much everybody's got a hammer laying around somewhere. Granted, I used a 3-pound hammer because I have quite a few hammers laying around being a carpenter. And having that 3-pound hammer, you can get that strike on the first time to get that impression. You don't want to be hitting that punch 3 or 4 times, because if it moves out of alignment just a little bit, you get double punches and it just looks bad. So you want to make sure to get a good firm strike the first time to get that perfect impression. And a 3-pound hammer definitely works better than a framing hammer. Now these are the washers that fit those Crypto Cloak devices that I was showing you. You can get 100 of these for about $15. You just want to make sure that they fit the Crypto Cloak that you buy. The one I bought was the 24mm by 2mm. If you look around, you can also find them for cheaper. Like this is an example. You can buy 50 for $7 instead of the 100. But if you're planning on building one and you only need 24 washers, make sure to buy the 50 washers, because I promise you, you will make a few mistakes. So you want to have extra washers. Now you can also buy the Crypto Cloak jigs right here on Amazon. You get 2 of these for $10. They have one for the 1-inch and one for the 24 millimeter. I went with the 24 millimeter. So if you do buy the 1-inch, just make sure that you buy a 1-inch washer. I just figured that it would be easier to get a 24 millimeter jig because it's going to be more accurate than the 1-inch, especially in terms of moving into washer sizes. So I think the 24 millimeter is definitely the way to go. And they do charge $5 for shipping. And it said that it was going to take a week or so to get here, but it actually showed up at my door within about 3 days. There's also a print file here, which I will put the link down in my description. This print file, if you have a 3D printer, you can actually download this and print this at home instead of having to buy one. So all in all, if you have a 3D printer, you could just take this print file, print yourself one, and it probably only cost you about 25 cents. Now there are quite a few different punch sets that you can get. This is just an example of one. This one comes with the all capitals as well as the lowercase. Now if you're only going to be doing a 24-word seed phrase, all you need is the capitals set. You don't need the lowercase. But if you have a passphrase on your device, then you're going to want the uppercase as well as the lowercase. Another thing you're going to want is a steel block or something solid to stamp your impressions in, because it will not work on wood. You have to put quite a blow in there to get a good impression. Even with a 3-pound mallet, you got to thump it pretty good. So a small hammer like this is not going to be the best. So if you don't need both of these, then you don't need to pay the $28 or whatever. You can look around and you can find some pretty good deals, but you might be able to get away with just buying something like this, which is just the all capitals. And mostly everybody has a hammer at home already that they can use, so you wouldn't need to buy something like that. So you could save a little bit of money there as well. But I would recommend when you are stamping, you're going to want to use a hammer that has a soft face like this so that it doesn't damage your punches. Because if you end up using a hammer like this, which is often used for framing, which has ridges right here, using a hammer like this could ruin your punches or damage them. So make sure that you're using a flat type of a hammer. And generally, most 3-pound hammers have smooth faces. And a lot of times, you can get yourself a decent, cheap one from somewhere like Harbor Freight in the 3-pound hammer range for like $7 to $10. The containers that I used, you get 2 of them for $13. But keep in mind, these are made of military-grade aluminum. So if there was a fire, odds are this container would melt. But having the steel inside of it, with the aluminum melted on the outside, you could probably just hit it with a hammer a few times and the aluminum would just break right off of the steel because it's not going to alloy with the steel. But in my particular case, I went with aluminum because my purpose for using this, it's going to be better to be in aluminum and something that's sealed completely. So for my particular use case, fire is not really an option for what I'm going to do with this particular seed phrase backup. So this one suited my purposes, but you can find quite a few of them with the same dimensions that are in stainless steel. You just have to look around a bit to find them on Amazon, but just make sure that the diameter of the inside dimension is a little bit bigger than 24 millimeters, just to make sure that you're going to be able to fit your seed phrase. Or you could even put the seed phrase together at home, get everything in order, hit it with a measuring tape or some calipers, get an exact dimension, then order the container later. And if you're not really interested in a container like this, and you just plan on keeping it at your house, I have another great idea that I came up with. I actually didn't do this, just didn't suit the purpose that I had for the backup that I built. Because it's a backup of a backup of a backup for me, so kind of a worst case scenario. But they have these tongue locks that you can buy. They basically fit on truck trailers or truck hitches. If you don't know what I'm talking about, they basically lock the hitch right here on your truck to keep the trailer on the ball so that nobody can remove your trailer unless they have the key. Now, I happened to find these. They actually have a 1/4-inch post on them with a 2.5-inch span, which is just about perfect for a 24-word seed phrase with the passphrase. Plus, you could always add a few extra washers to make up the space. But overall, if you look at this device, you can see with the base right here, your washers would be able to slide over this right here. You could put your entire seed phrase and your passphrase on here, put a washer on the back and the front just to protect it from being viewed. Then you could slide this top on, and essentially, instead of putting your backup seed phrase in a container, you could actually put it on this device here, which actually has a lock. So by popping the top on, it's protected from corrosion. Your seed phrase and the washers cannot be read because you would snap it together nice and tight. That way, if you stored it in the house, you couldn't take it apart to view it unless you had the keys to open it. So if somebody found this device, they would have to have the key to actually open it to read the individual words from your recovery phrase. So this would protect you from people looking at it, to where the other container, the one like I built, if somebody found that laying in a drawer and they popped it open, they could just twist the nut off, they could read all the words and write them down, put it back together, throw it back in the drawer, and then go steal my crypto, and I'd have no clue of how they did it. But at least in this case, it would be locked, which would keep people from viewing it. So it's just another thing to think about. You just want to make sure that if you do this, you get the 1/4-inch post, because most of these come in like a 5/8 post, and that won't fit. So having the 8mm center on the 24mm washer, this 1/4-inch will fit in there. And if there's too much of a gap, you can take the plastic sheath off of like a Bic pen, for example, pop the ends out, then you can slide that over this post right here, then put your washers over top of that, and that will give you the perfect spacing that you need to keep the washers nice and tight. Then snap the top on. And you've got yourself a backup seed phrase under lock and key. But that's just another idea, especially if you were planning on keeping it around the house or something like that. It might be better to have it under lock and key. If you're going to bury it in your backyard or something, it might be better to have something like this that's waterproof and isn't going to rust or corrode over time with a nice seal. But overall, I really liked the way that this turned out. It was a fun project. All in all, the 24 words for my seed phrase, as well as my passphrase, took about 2.5, maybe 3 hours in total to get them all punched nice and neat, to lay them down and get them all inked in with the black Sharpie like you see here. I did make quite a few mistakes. There was a few impressions that didn't work out, like you can see right here on this particular one. This side of the M didn't quite come in as well. So I kept this just to show you as an example. Everything here, the impressions were absolutely perfect. Perfect here, but it was slightly leaned with the punch to one side, and it didn't quite give the impression here on this side. So I left that just to show you guys, if you're not happy with something like that, you can attempt a double punch, but if you don't get it lined up perfect the second time, you will get a double print. So you got to make sure you got it in there right. But you can see how deep each one of these indentations is, and that is just from one good smack from a 3-pound hammer. And they are very, very deep impressions. But I really like the way this turned out. I'm super happy. It was a fun project. And of course, if anybody wants to build one, now you kind of have some ideas that you could use. And if you have another person that holds crypto or something, you could buy something like this. You could split the cost of the punches, the containers, the washers, and everything, and get everything for half price. So all in all, you should be able to build them for quite a bit cheaper than those junky crypto steel plates that you can buy on Amazon. I wouldn't trust my recovery phrase to one of those any day. Never. Not going to do it. Something like this, I could get behind this. I really could. But I would probably want to have 2 of them for each wallet, one stored on site and one stored off site. But you definitely don't want it falling into the wrong hands, so be very careful about where you put them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Good luck and have a great day.